They were meant for each other, the plane and its pilot. The plane was a B-17 with an evil tail number 12666 and a nickname Old 666. Everyone who worked with it hated it. The nickname was well earned. In each sortie, something would happen to the plane, either Japanese AA guns or engine problems, or even a complete breakdown at the worst possible moment. The officer who saved it from being scrapped and later piloted was J. Zima, a known troublemaker, daredevil, and a misfit. He and his 8 crew members were known as eager beavers, or psychos when they couldn't hear it, and with good cause. They volunteered for missions no sensible people would. What missions? Reconnaissance. But no ordinary patrols. No. This team of misfits was ready to go right into enemy dens. They would fly above the airfields and fortified positions on altitudes below 6 kilometers and photograph everything there. By the morning of June 16, 1943, when Old 666 was getting ready to scout Japanese airfields on Bougainville Island, much had been changed inside that regular-looking B-17E. The space reserved for bombs was emptied and defense weapons were installed. The change was justified. The Japanese knew Zima's plane by sight, so to speak, and chased it each time they could spot it. This time was no different. Once the plane had been spotted over Bougainville, almost every fighter the island had took off after it. 17 newest Zeros were climbing as fast as they could. It would have been the best time to retreat, but that mission was a matter of life and death for thousands of US soldiers and officers. So, the B-17 never strayed from its course and kept making photographs. The Japanese pilots realized they had finally caught their insolent spy and surrounded the flying fortress. The first 3 Zeros attacked from the front, trying to hit the cockpit. They knew that trying to attack a B-17 from behind was a bad idea. Imagine their surprise when the first attacker caught fire and dropped down after being hit with a forward-facing machine gun, with the second one promptly following the first, thanks to the helping hand of Joe Sarnowski, the bombardier and nose gunner. Nevertheless, the third Zero managed to hit the nose of the plane a second later, injuring him and J. Zima. The next enemy for Old 666 was a heavy twin-engine fighter. We still aren't certain what plane it was, and there was no time for details back then, since a single shot from that plane's large-caliber cannon could basically rip the B-17 into pieces. Sarnowski, bleeding profusely, got back to the machine gun and managed to down the enemy fighter at the last moment. That was his last act of courage. The rest of the crew, meanwhile, was bracing the enemy fighters. Zima sent the B-17 into a sharp dive, exposing enemy fighters to tail and waist guns. He steered wildly, putting the plane into a glide to leave no chance for enemy shells. When the Japanese had finally run out of their fuel and turned back to Bougainville, the crew learned that the battle lasted no less than 45 minutes, and it looked unbelievable for unusually fast-paced and short air battles, and even impossible if you consider the odds. Their raked and barely controllable B-17 was crawling east. At that time, no one knew that their mission would break all records in the awards received by a plane crew on a single mission in the history of the US Air Force. Joe Sarnowski, the nose gunner, and J. Zima, the commander, were awarded Medals of Honor, posthumously for Sarnowski, while the rest of the crew were awarded Distinguished Service Crosses. As for the cursed plane, Zima was offered to choose any new B-17 instead, and he would take none of them, asking to repair his old 666. It was no accident when he chose that plane.